Essay number 73. 10 questions to ask yourself when you don't know where your life should go next. You're stuck. Not in traffic, not in a dead-end job, not in a bad relationship. You're stuck in that weird purgatory between who you were and who you're supposed to become, and you have absolutely no idea which direction to move. Everyone else seems to have a compass. They're making moves, taking leaps, building lives that look like they make sense. And you're standing at the crossroads, paralyzed, waiting for a sign that never comes. The advice you get is useless. Follow your passion. What passion? Trust your gut. Your gut is as confused as you are. You'll know when you know. But what if you never know? Here's what nobody tells you. When you don't know where to go next, you're asking the wrong questions. You're asking, what should I do with my life? When you should be asking questions that actually have answers. So let me give you 10 questions that will cut through the fog. Not abstract philosophical questions. Real practical questions that will show you exactly where to go next. First question. If you had the life you think you want, what would tomorrow be like? Not your elevator pitch. Not your LinkedIn bio. Not the story you'd tell at a high school reunion. What would you actually do tomorrow? When you imagine your dream life, you probably imagine the highlights, the promotion announcement, the wedding photos, the book launch. But life doesn't exist in highlights. It exists in Tuesdays, in morning routines, in what you do between lunch and dinner. So if you had that life you think you want, what time would you wake up tomorrow? What would you eat for breakfast? How would you spend your morning? Who would you talk to? What work would you do? How would you end your day? Now here's the real question. How different is that from what you're doing now? And more importantly, what from that vision could you actually start doing tomorrow? Because the truth is, you don't suddenly arrive at your dream life. You build it one ordinary day at a time. Second question. If social media didn't exist, what would you do differently? Would you still want that job if you couldn't post about it? Would you still want that relationship if nobody could see it? Would you still want to travel there if you couldn't share the photos? What choices would you make if you didn't feel they were being silently judged by the faceless mob behind the screens? What would matter if there was no audience? Who would you be if nobody was watching? This isn't about social media being bad. It's about recognizing how much of your life you're living for the performance versus the experience. How many of your desires are actually yours versus what you think will look good to others? Third question. If nobody would know what you did with the rest of your life, what would you do? If your life wasn't performative at all, if there was nothing you could get from doing something other than the pure experience of doing it, no recognition, no validation, no status, just you and the thing itself. What would energize you then? What would you be interested in? What would feel worth doing even if nobody ever knew you did it? That's your real desire. Everything else is just ego. Fourth question. If you died yesterday, what would you most regret? Not if you died tomorrow. That gives you too much imaginary time to fix things. If you were already dead, if it was already over, what would you regret the most? What conversations didn't you have? What risks didn't you take? What love didn't you express? What dreams didn't you pursue? What fears did you let win? Your regrets aren't morbid. They're instructive. They're showing you exactly what matters to you, exactly what you need to do next. Fifth question. If you could choose 5 things that matter most to you, what would they be? Not 20 things, not 10 things, 5. Because whether you realize it or not, your life will fundamentally be built on just a few core values. When you're living in alignment with them, life feels right even when it's hard. When you're not, life feels wrong even when it looks successful. Is it creativity, connection, security, adventure, growth, service, freedom? What are the 5 non-negotiables that without them, life feels empty regardless of what else you achieve? These aren't just nice ideas. These are your navigation system. Every decision should move you closer to one of these 5 things. Sixth question. To what in your life do you feel a subtle, unexplainable nudge? Not a loud calling, not a clear sign, a nudge, a quiet pull towards something that doesn't quite make sense. What do you find yourself drawn to, even though you can't explain why? What gives you a feeling of subtle, unexplainable enjoyment? What interests you, even though it doesn't fit your life plan? Pay attention to these nudges. Your mind responds to what you think you should like. Your soul responds to what actually resonates. The nudges are your soul trying to get your attention. Seventh question. If you knew nobody would judge you, what would you do with your days? If you would only be praised for your choices. If everyone would think you were brilliant no matter what you did. If failure was impossible and success was guaranteed. What would you try? Where would you go? What would you create? Who would you become? The gap between that answer and your current life, that's not wisdom or practicality, that's fear. And fear is a terrible life coach. Eighth question. What are you struggling with the most right now? This seems counterintuitive, but your biggest struggle is actually your clearest signal. The things that plague you most deeply are pointing toward where you need to go next. If your deepest issue is loneliness, your next phase needs to involve connection. If it's feeling creatively stifled, you need to create. If it's financial stress, you need to address your relationship with money. If it's health, you need to prioritize your body. Your struggles aren't punishments, they're invitations. They're showing you exactly what needs attention, exactly where growth is waiting. Ninth question. What do you already have going for you at this present moment? Stop waiting for the perfect circumstances. Stop waiting for more resources, more time, more confidence, more clarity. Start where you are. Use what you have. Do what you can. What skills do you already possess? What connections do you already have? What opportunities are already in front of you that you're ignoring because they don't look like what you expected? Your next step isn't out there somewhere. It's hidden in what you already have. 10th question. If you had to live tomorrow on repeat for the rest of your life, what would you do? This is the most important question of all, because your life doesn't exist in your 5-year plan, or your vision board, or your goals list. Your life exists in your days, in what you do between waking up and going to sleep. If you lived today on repeat forever, where would you end up? Would you have written anything, created anything, connected with anyone? Would you have taken care of your body? Would you have done work that matters? Would you have been kind? Would you have been yourself? Your habits compound, your days accumulate. The life you're living today is creating the life you'll be living in 10 years. Not your intentions, not your plans, your actual daily actions. So if today became your forever, would you be okay with that? And if not, what needs to change tomorrow? Here's what I need you to understand. You're not stuck because you don't know where to go. You're stuck because you're asking questions that don't have answers while ignoring questions that do. You're waiting for clarity about your entire life when what you need is clarity about tomorrow. You're waiting for a calling when what you need is to pay attention to the nudges. You're waiting for permission when what you need is to stop performing. The path forward isn't hidden. It's just obscured by all the noise. Other people's expectations, society's definitions of success, your own ego's need for validation. Strip all that away. Answer these 10 questions honestly, not with what sounds good, not with what you think you should say, with what's actually true for you. Your next step will become obvious. Not your next 10 steps, not your whole life plan, just the next step. And that's all you need. Because here's the secret nobody tells you. People who seem to know where they're going, they don't. They just got really good at taking the next obvious step, and then the next, and then the next. You don't find your path by thinking about it. You find it by walking. These questions aren't meant to give you all the answers. They're meant to get you moving. So stop waiting for certainty. Stop waiting for the perfect plan. Stop waiting to know where your life is going. Just answer the questions. Take the next step. The path appears as you walk it. It always has. It always will. The only question is, are you ready to start walking?